Have you ever felt so happy that the whole world smiles? Have you ever felt so good that you could cry? Have you ever felt a happiness surrounding your life, but never stopped to think and wonder why? Have you ever felt the love of God filling your heart, or the Holy Ghost making straight your way? Well, let me tell you people, there's one way to go, and Jesus can show you that way. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus can show you that way. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus can show you that way. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus can show you that way. Have you ever felt the love of God filling your heart, or the Holy Ghost making straight your way? Well, let me tell you people, there's one way to go, and Jesus can show you that way. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus can show you that way. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus can show you that way. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus can show you that way. A little bit about myself. I grew up on Point Pearce. Point Pearce is about 150 miles out of Adelaide, on the York Peninsula, halfway and the people over there are called Narunga people. And that's my father's mob, and my mother's mob was the Ngurrindjeri from the River Murray area. And those two tribes couldn't see eye to eye. But I grew up on Point Pearce, and uh, childhood there was very good. Kids can run wild. They didn't have to be looked after, because they even though they had a bigger area to cover, and there's plenty of things for us to do. But growing up, I realised that something was different. The more when I started working for $5 a week, uh, I got to know the white bosses and they always used to talk down to us kids and the workers, and you got this feeling that well, you knew that you were different from them, and I knew that you weren't in the same classes, and they made it very clear. And as I grew up to be a teenager, and it was time for me to leave the mission, I wanted to travel a bit, and in those days you had to have a permit to leave the mission or to go on the mission, and on that permit it says you had to sign up, sign your name on there, and the reading went, I ceased to be an Aboriginal, to go out go out and act like a white person and get a job and be allowed to go into the pub and drink. But when I became 14, 15, I went up to the Riverland, the grape growing area where there's plenty of seasonal work. And in my ventures out, then I realized why the old people warned me about white people, why they said don't trust white people, because I realized all the prejudice that I was protected from on the mission. I really opened my eyes to it. We were made to stand in the line and wait till everybody else was served, and even though you've been waiting there for half an hour and somebody new comes in there, they'd get served and you're still there, and those sort of things. But when I was travelling around, when I first come to Adelaide, I stood at the bus stop and got on the bus from Woodville going into the city, and there was a woman and her son on the bus, and they were talking out loud so I can hear them. And in those days, white people, black people never used to be able to, weren't allowed to confront white people or anything. But they were saying things like, the little boy said to his mother, "Why don't they send them back to where they come from?" And that's just how I felt. I felt like an alien, a stranger in my own country. And when I got to work on the railways, a lot of the jokes were racist jokes about Aboriginal people and that, and I had to sit there and endure it, and being ridiculed by the rest of the members in the gang. And so I became bitter and very violent. And, and this one went on for a number of years, and I started drinking heavy, and I was drinking wine and beer, and when I couldn't get that, I would drink methylated spirits and the boot polish and all those sort of things, just to, because I was starting to feel guilty about being Aboriginal. I didn't want to be an Aboriginal because of the status that the Aboriginal people had. They were classed as well, not as even as human beings, I suppose, but they were classed as second-rate citizens. But that anger got got to me, got to me, and I became very violent. And I turned that violence in on myself. I was working at I was working on the mission there first, and I was drinking heavy, and me and my wife had a lot of problems. And then one night, one day, when I was working on the rail, she left me, and I went back to the mission looking for her, and she told me it was over, and I was drinking heavy, and I put the, I laid down on the bed, and I got my cousin's gun, and I was drinking 8 days a week, I think. And that's how much drug I put down, and I was coming of the shakes, couldn't hold a cup of tea, couldn't couldn't do anything, couldn't hardly walk because of very low in nourishment in my body, and I laid and I wanted to get rid of out of this world, end it all, and I put a gun underneath my chin and lay down on the bed, and I put the butt of the gun on my foot like that and pulled the trigger, and it kicked, the bullet went underneath my chin and come out just below my eye, and busted all my teeth out of my cup there, and fragments of lead was scattered through my skull and that. And lucky I never lost my eye. I had a lot of damage to my eye, but the ambulance came out on the mission and picked me up, and they took me to Maitland, and there, when they seen how serious it was, they rushed me to Adelaide Hospital. But on the way to the hospital from Point Pearce, the attendant that was looking after me, I was laying down with all this blood in my socket of my eye, and he kept cleaning it out, and they had a tube down my throat to clear out the blood and stop me choking on my blood, and I could see myself from inside as if I was up on the top of the ceiling of the ambulance, and looking down on me, and even though I couldn't feel any pain there, I could see my body there, and all the trouble, and I thinking, what am I doing up here, and my body's down there, but it was very hard to understand, to think about it, the being able to see everything and not feel the pain that I was in, and I often thought about it afterwards, But I woke up in the hospital sometime later, and a few days later, and my head was all swollen up. It looked like the Elephant Man, and my face was all out of character because of swellings and that. And I begged my mum to bring a mirror, and even though the nurse and them told them not to, and she brought it in for me, and I looked at it, and I made a promise there on my bed, the hospital bed, that I would change things around. I wouldn't let my kids see me growing up as a drunk and the mess I was in. But while I shot myself, I was still talking, my babies, my kids, my babies, and and my cousin, you know, he really mentioned that, and that was the thing that kept me going, I think. And but when I got out of hospital and my swelling went down in my head, and there was a great fear that I would stay like that, you know. But when I got back and I got in the same routine, mixing up with the same mob and drinking and gambling and all that sort of things, and then the pressures of life got to me again, and I laid over the bed, and I cut my wrists and just laid upside down on the bed as much as I could, and let the blood run out of me, and I wanted to get out of this world. I was sick of living. I was sick of the pain that not only hurting myself the way I was trying to kill myself, but hurting the people that love me, my family, and and I was quite a few hours on the. When I laying down in the bed, and I woke up in this pool of blood, and I had tried every time I tried to get up, I kept falling down, and nobody else was in the house, only me, and this was in Adelaide, and I pulled myself to the kitchen, dragged myself to the kitchen, and I managed every time I tried to get up to the sink to get a glass of water, I fell down. But I managed to get a bit in Salvital and a bit of water and drink that, and I laid down in the kitchen for I don't know how long. But every time I tried to get up, I just fell over because I had no blood in me. And I managed to drag myself to the front door, and my car was parked out front, and the latch on the door was pretty high up, you know, about chest high, and I made many attempts to get out and open it, but I finally did, and I dragged myself out to the car and dragged myself beyond the wheel and started my car up, and then I went around to my cousin, which was only about a couple of k's away, and they took me and drove me to hospital there, and then they stitched my hand up, you know, and then I had to take a psychiatric test to see whether I was still suicidal and all that, and while I was in hospital, I